The Declaration of Independence was signed back in 1776, 250 years ago. Now, the Revolutionary War didn't end until 1783, but I guess we're counting the founding of the country based on when we filed the paperwork. Now, the Revolutionary War is obviously an important time period in American history, and so American Girl doll honors this time period with Felicity, a colonial girl who loves horses. She was the fourth historical doll, released in 1991, and so today we are going to explore her 35-year history. But first, let's talk about the sponsor of today's video, Pair Eyewear. So when I'm not on camera, I don't dress like this, obviously, but I also sometimes wear glasses off camera. And I love Pair Eyewear because they let you change the look of your glasses with magnetic top frames. They just snap onto your glasses. You can have your base frame, which is kind of neutral, and then with the top frames you can have fun looks without committing to that being your glasses 100% of the time. My base frames are the Casper in clear with my prescription. I submitted my prescription online. I just took a photo of the piece of paper, and then it needed my pupil distance, and it was able to give me that by scanning my face using my phone camera. That was very impressive. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know pupil distance was really a thing, to be fair. Base frames start at just $60, and then you can get top frames that are shaped to match whatever base frame you get. I got Ditsy Doodles, which is a glitter crystal frame. This is part of their Valentine's Day collection. The best holiday. And so they're clear and sparkly with little hearts all over them. They're, I think, my favorite. I also got the Flamingo to Blush Gradient Crystal and Polarized Tortoise Sun Tops. So these are toppers that turn your glasses into sunglasses. And so it's cool, you could just have the one pair of glasses with the prescription and then have them turn into prescription sunglasses without having to carry separate prescription sunglasses. Pair has tons of different top frames. There's seasonal and limited edition ones, like the Valentine's Day ones. And they even do collabs like Disney princesses. Which, by the way, my Disney princess ranking video is still to this day my most controversial video. People hate my opinions. Pair Eyewear is risk-free. They have free US shipping and free returns. So, you may as well try them. If you're interested in trying them out, click the link in my description box to shop Pair Eyewear and use code SarahSeraph15 to get a free gift with your purchase. Thank you, Pair, for sponsoring today's video. So the story of Felicity really starts with the founding of the American Girl brand. The founder, Pleasant Rowland, was a teacher, and she went on a trip to Colonial Williamsburg. And she loved it. She was so inspired, and she wanted to find a way to educate and connect with children the way that Colonial Williamsburg does. Help kids learn about history in a new way. And that was what inspired the American Girl doll brand. The first three characters were Kirsten, Molly, and Samantha, none of whom live in colonial times. That wouldn't come until Felicity 5 years later. Now, why was there such a delay making a colonial girl when Colonial Williamsburg is what inspired this whole project? I'm not really sure. Possibly this was a delay because of manufacturing limitations. The first three American Girl dolls all have bangs, which wouldn't have been as historically accurate for a girl from Felicity's time, though I think it's my understanding that it's also not super accurate for a girl from Kirsten's time, so I don't know if this is entirely because of bangs. And then the first three dolls came with white cloth bodies, so if you don't know the anatomy of an American Girl doll, their limbs and their head are all vinyl, and then their body is cloth that's stuffed with fluff. When the first three characters came out, they had white cloth bodies because you couldn't see the bodies under the clothes. But Felicity's clothes are cut in such a way where you can kind of see the body. And when Felicity was released, all of the cloth bodies were redone to be flesh colored. You can see my body is also flesh colored. So maybe it had to do with the physical manufacturing of the doll. Maybe they thought that these other time periods would be more successful. I couldn't really find a reason. But she was the first doll that they added after the brand launched. When they were working on designing Felicity, they worked with experts at Colonial Williamsburg. There was a woman named Sandy Bradshaw who did some early designs for Felicity, and at this time the character was named Lucy. The doll launched in 1991, and she was released with the doll, her first 3 books, and the associated collections for those books. The Felicity doll has light skin, a classic face mold, red hair, and green eyes. The classic face mold just means the face sculpt that the first dolls had before they designed any other ones. And then this is her meet outfit. Meet MEET, as in the outfit that the doll wears when you meet her. She has a cream floral dress that she wears over a white shift, socks, and then these little colonial shoes with buckles on them. You could also separately purchase meet accessories, which I do not have for her. These included a cap, a coral necklace, garters, a drawstring purse, a Bitcoin, and a handkerchief. And when you purchased the doll, she came with her first book, Meet Felicity. Meet Felicity came out in 1991, because that's when the doll launched. For a second, I thought I could stand her up, but she's just like looming. She's like bigger than I am. Okay, so that's not gonna work. Never mind. I guess I could just put her down, but I don't know. I enjoy having her here. The Felicity books were written by Valerie Tripp. Valerie Tripp is, I'd say, the foremost American Girl author. She's written a ton of the American Girl doll books. And Pleasant Rowland and Valerie Tripp knew each other before Pleasant started working on the American Girl brand. Valerie was one of the first people she brought on. So in Meet Felicity, we open with Felicity visiting her father's general store. Felicity loves her father's store. She prefers staying and helping out there compared to more traditional domestic work at home. We meet Felicity's father, who runs the store. We also meet their servant, Marcus, who's working at the store. He is a black man, and he is referred to in the text of the story as a servant, but in the historical context section at the back of the book, he is referred to as a slave. Half the people who lived in the town were African American slaves, such as Marcus. They were forced to work long and hard for the person who owned them. They got little in return except basic food, clothing, and shelter. And then we also meet Felicity's father's apprentice, Ben. He's sort of quiet when we first meet him. He's like a teenager, and he lives with Felicity's family. Felicity's full name is Felicity Merriman, so he lives with the Merriman family. So we meet these guys, and then a lady comes and visits the shop. And this lady gossips with Felicity's dad about the town drunk Jiggy Nye. Why is that his name? I don't know. I googled, is Jiggy a name? And one of the first results you get is the American Girl doll wiki saying about Jiggy Nye, if Jiggy is a nickname, it is never explained as such in the context of the books. But Jiggy Nye is apparently a mean man who drinks too much rum, and he runs the tannery in town where they make leather. And apparently he has gotten a new horse, which is a problem because he is known for mistreating his horses. Mr. Merriman is supposed to deliver Jiggy Nye a bit for this horse, and this lady's like, don't give it to him until he pays you. So Mr. Merriman is going to send Ben, the apprentice, to do the delivery, and Felicity is able to convince her mother to let her come along on the delivery too, because she desperately wants to see this new horse. She is a horse girl. She loves horses, which I knew that Felicity loves horses, because I feel like, especially when I was a kid, she was really marketed as the horse girl, and I don't love horses. I feel like all horse stories are kind of the same. I have the same problem with dragon stories too, where it's like, it's this big, powerful creature and it's dangerous, but I have a bond with it, and it lets me ride it even though it's wild and untamed, and it makes me feel free. That's literally every dragon and every horse story, and I like neither of them. But not to spoil Felicity's stories, there's less horse stuff than I was worried about. I thought it was gonna be just 6 books about horses. That's not really the vibe. There's more horse that I'm interested in. I still could have done with less horse, but I think perhaps my impression was misguided. So Felicity and Ben go to see Jiggy Nye. While they're walking, Felicity is complaining about being a girl and having to wear petticoats, and she's like, I wish I could wear breeches like you. You're lucky you're a boy, so you can wear pants and do whatever you want. And Ben is like, I can't do whatever I want. I'm an apprentice. Ben's apprenticeship comes up throughout these stories. It's basically like a contract. He's working for Mr. Merriman for the next 3 years in exchange for this education and for lodging and whatever. But this isn't a job he can quit. He's stuck here until his contract is ended. So I get from Ben's perspective, he feels kind of stuck. But it is funny to have her be like, it sucks being a girl. You have a lot more freedom than I do. And for his response to be like, well, hey, I'm under a temporary contract, after which I will be able to do whatever I want. And I will have way more freedom than you. The two of them make it to the tannery, and Jiggy Nye is yelling at the horse and threatening to whip the horse. Ben asks for a payment in exchange for the bit, but Jiggy Nye doesn't want to pay, so he sends them away and threatens them with the whip. And Felicity wistfully watches the horse as they walk away. Gee, I wonder what's going to happen with this horse. So unpredictable, a horse story. The horse is this beautiful copper color, and so Felicity says that if she ever got that horse, she would call her Penny. And Ben says that it's also a good name because Penny could be short for independent, because this horse is a real free spirit. So they go back, they give the bit back to Mr. Merriman. They're like, he doesn't want to pay. I don't know. And Ben repeats what he heard, which is that Jiggy Nye claims that he won this horse in a bet. And the man he won the horse from claims that he put a notice in the paper to find the owner, but no one responded. So this horse has a real mystery provenance. We never find out where this horse came from, how Jiggy Nye got this horse, but we're kind of implying that we're suspicious whether this horse is rightfully Jiggy Nye's. It's not like a horse he raised from when it was a baby. It's a horse that he got from somewhere, somehow. Don't worry about it. And the family all agrees. They're like, yeah, it's a bummer that Jiggy Nye has this horse, because, you know, he beats his horses. Nobody can do anything about that, I guess. That's his right as the owner of this mystery horse. And so Felicity, of course, she wants to go back and see the horse. She has to wait a few days because there's a rainstorm. It's a running thing in these books that Felicity is not a terribly patient person, so it's challenging for her to wait to see this horse. Felicity finally finds an opportunity to go and see this horse. She is supposed to go with her younger siblings, Nan and William, and make some sort of delivery, run some errand, something. And after they do that, she drags them along to the tannery. Penny is all tied up and she looks pretty bad, like her fur is matted and she's thin and has a cut on her leg. And so Felicity climbs over the fence into the pasture, I guess, the place where the horse is being kept. And she tries to give Penny some sugar. But then Jiggy Nye comes from behind and grabs Felicity. Like, what are you doing in my pasture with my horse? Ah. Then Penny whinnies because she's upset, obviously. She's not having a fun time. And so then Jiggy Nye goes to approach Penny with a big stick, as in like he's gonna hit her with it, but Penny is able to pull free of the rope that she's being tied up with, and somehow in the commotion Jiggy Nye falls to the ground and gets all muddy, and Penny runs to the other side of the pasture. "You worthless nag," Jiggy yelled after Penny. His face was splattered with mud. "I'd give you to the devil himself if he could ride you. Anyone who could ride you can have you. Hear me?" Jiggy stomped towards his house. Suddenly, he turned to Felicity and snarled, "And you! Get yourself and these brats out of here! I'll skin you alive if I ever see you here again!" Then he stormed off. So he's great, is what we've learned about Jiggy Nye. Felicity's parents find out that this all happened because her younger siblings talk about it at the dinner table. And Felicity is like, "Can we buy Penny? Like, get Penny away from him?" And they're like, "No, that's a troublesome horse. We already have 2 horses. We can't manage another horse." And she's like, "I'll take care of the horse." And they're like, "You're not really responsible, so we don't know about that." And they say something like, "A wild horse and a wild girl is too much for one family to handle." But Felicity will not be deterred. She wants to have this horse. So in the early morning, she sneaks out so she can visit Penny. And she gets her clothes all dirty because she's like in the mud or outdoors or like whatever. I don't know. She's always outdoors getting dirty, but I guess the problem is this will be a giveaway if every morning her clothes are already dirty. But then she borrows Ben's breeches from the mending pile. So instead of wearing her petticoat, she's wearing these breeches. And she can get them dirty and it doesn't matter. And she visits Penny every morning for like a month. They bond. She's able to start riding her. And then one day, Ben catches her with the breeches. I feel like this bonnet has too wide of a brim. Or I don't know what you call it. There's just like so much fabric. It's like flopping. But then one day, Ben catches her with the breeches. And she explains everything to him. And he's like kind of impressed. He's like, "All right, I'll keep your secret." Which there had already been some discussion at the house of like, where did these breeches go? And Ben didn't know before. He was like, "I don't know. I put them in the mending pile." Now he does know. And so now he's like, "Oh, I lent them to a friend." And it's cute because it's like, ah, he and Felicity are friends. Because before he had been like pretty quiet and kept to himself. And so then finally we get to the last step of Felicity's plan, which is she grooms Penny, which she hadn't really done up till now because she didn't want to give it away to Jiggy Nye. Because if the horse is suddenly beautiful looking, it will be very suspicious. So she finally does groom Penny, and then she rides Penny through the town because Jiggy and I had said that anyone who could ride the horse could have her, which he clearly didn't genuinely mean. And she goes to her parents, who are like, what in the world is going on? And she's like, see, can we buy this horse? It's not a wild horse anymore. I like tamed it. And they're like, no one would give up this horse. This horse is now beautiful and amazing, and no one in their right mind would get rid of it. And of course, Jiggy Nye shows up and he's like, I'll never sell it to you. You'll never ride it again. And he takes the horse back. And everyone in the family is like, well, this doesn't bode well for the lifespan of that horse. But I guess there's nothing we can do. And so Felicity goes to the barn and she's crying. And Ben comes and kind of comforts her. Like, you did everything you could. Like, it was still worth it. And they sort of agree that Penny would be better off running free. And so then that night, Felicity goes to Penny and rides her. And they jump over the fence to the pasture. Before the fence had been broken, Penny had slammed into it or something and broken the fence. And that's why she was tied up earlier. And so Felicity thought they could easily jump over the broken part of the fence, but the fence is fixed. And at first she's like, oh no, I don't think Penny can do this jump, but of course she can. And then she lets Penny go, and she returns the breeches to Ben. And later Felicity's mom is like, oh, your friend returned the breeches. And Ben is like, yes, but I'd be honored to lend them again. The end. The next book is Felicity Learns a Lesson. Remember, this was released at the same time as the first book. Felicity has climbed the roof to pick apples because they're making apple butter. I wanted to mention this line. She watched a bright red cardinal bird swoop across the sky. Felicity grinned. How lovely it must feel to fly wherever you want to go, with nothing holding you down, she thought. Because, you know, freedom. We have to remind you that these books are about freedom. But then Felicity's mother frantically calls her down, because it's not very ladylike to climb up onto the roof, and they have a conversation while making the apple butter. Like, being a woman is doing a lot of domestic work that goes unseen. Because, like, the apple butter, you eat it and then it's gone. But you're still proud of the work that you've done. Later, Felicity is helping her sister learn the Lord's Prayer. And they're using a horn book, which is, I guess, a piece of paper on, like, a slab that's covered with a thin sheet of cow's horn to basically laminate it to protect the paper. And they're reading the Lord's Prayer, and her sister Nan is like, do we live in God's kingdom or the kingdom of England? And Felicity is like, both. Virginia is controlled by the king, so we live in the kingdom of England, but then everywhere is God's kingdom. Because she's helping Nan learn to read, it comes up in conversation that Felicity would like to go to college, and her mom is like, no, but it is time for your education as a gentlewoman, and you're going to start getting lessons from Miss Manderley. Is she named Miss Manderley because it sounds like Mannerly? Because she teaches manners? Possibly. Better name than Jiggy Nye. And Felicity's going to be doing these lessons with two sisters from England. So the next day, Felicity gets all dressed up to go to her lessons. And the town is busier than usual. There's a ton of people in town for public days, which is apparently when court is in session. So there's a ton of people from out of town. And when Felicity stops by her father's store, there's some women from out of town complaining about the tax on tea. And Ben kind of explains this tax to Felicity, and he thinks it's unfair. Felicity then goes to her lessons, and she meets the two sisters from England, Annabelle and Elizabeth Cole. Annabelle is the older sister, and she's a snob. She doesn't like that they're amongst the colonists. She judges the fact that Felicity is the shopkeeper's daughter, and she calls Elizabeth Bitsy, which Elizabeth doesn't like. Miss Manderley teaches the girls how to do a tea service, and she says the tea service is the sign of your host's hospitality. So it's rude to refuse. You're not drinking because you're thirsty or eating because you're hungry. It's just like a respectful thing. But when you've had enough tea, the polite thing to do is to turn your cup over, put the spoon on top of it, and say, I shall take no more tea. There's a little detail in this scene where Felicity has had a loose tooth, and finally during the tea service, her loose tooth falls into her tea. And Miss Manderley is like, well, I don't know the proper thing to do about that. I guess, servant, get her some new tea. They keep having lessons. Felicity bonds with Elizabeth over them both liking horses, and she explains the whole Penny thing to her. Then one day during lessons, Miss Manderley leaves the room, and Annabelle starts complaining about the fact that the colonists threw some tea into the river. And you know, how uncivilized and disrespectful. And she's sort of judging Felicity, like, these are your people. And as they're walking home that day, Elizabeth tells Felicity that Annabelle has a bit of a crush on Ben. Later, Felicity talks to her dad about the tea tax, and he's currently undecided about how he feels and what he should do, because some shopkeepers are no longer going to sell tea in a protest of this tax. Later, Felicity is at Elizabeth's house, and they're both working on their samplers, like practicing their embroidery, and Felicity messes up her thread, and Elizabeth's like, oh, my mom has scissors in her room, so we can cut the thread. And so they go in Elizabeth's parents' room, and they see all of Mrs. Cole's wigs. And Felicity asks if she can try one on, and Elizabeth's like, I guess so. And Felicity tries on one of the wigs, and then does a comedy bit where she's impersonating Annabelle. The crux of the bit being that Annabelle is in love with Ben. She also refers to Annabelle as Banana Belle, and I was like, did they have bananas in colonial Virginia? And so I looked up the history of bananas. In the 15th and 16th centuries, Portuguese colonists started banana plantations in the Atlantic islands, Brazil, and Western Africa. North Americans began consuming bananas on a small scale at very high prices shortly after the Civil War, though it was only in the 1880s that the food became more widespread. As late as the Victorian era, bananas were not widely known in Europe, although they were available. So did Felicity know about bananas? Maybe, I guess. I don't know if bananas had quite reached them yet, but that's the funny nickname we're going to use for Annabelle. Then, of course, Annabelle walks in. She's very pissed. And she's like, I'm going to tell on you for wearing the wig and making fun of me. And then Felicity's like, well, then I'll tell Ben that you like him. And Annabelle's like, ooh, got me there. All right, goodbye. And Elizabeth says that Felicity is very brave because Elizabeth has never stood up to Annabelle. Then Elizabeth walks Felicity home, and it's cold out because it's like evening time in the fall. And so they run into Mr. Merriman's store to kind of warm up for a moment. And Mr. Merriman is in the middle of being confronted by some men. He has signed an agreement, along with some other shopkeepers, to not sell tea anymore. It's a group of 400 merchants, which I'm sure is a historically based figure. And these men are upset because he's being disloyal. We have a lot of conversations about this tax on tea and people's opinions on the tax on tea and the different sides of the argument about it, and it gets kind of repetitive. I understand that these are educational books for children, and they're trying to explain this concept, which is kind of a difficult concept for children, because kids don't really have a great understanding of taxes to begin with. So I understand why we keep having this very repetitive conversation, but reading it as an adult, I was getting bored. But Elizabeth freaks out, because her family are loyalists. They are loyal to the king. But after the men leave, Felicity has a conversation with her dad, and he explains that they're going to stop drinking tea at home, and that there might end up being a war. And we also learn that Ben is a very strong patriot, which means that he is not loyal to the king. He thinks the colonists should be free. He doesn't like the things that the king is doing, like the tax on tea. Which then, at lessons, word has gotten around that Mr. Merriman is protesting the tea tax. And Annabelle hates this. She doesn't want to serve Felicity tea. She thinks that her dad is a traitor. And Elizabeth just sits there quietly. She doesn't stand up for Felicity. And Felicity runs off crying. She goes up to her room and she's crying. And she tells her mom that she doesn't want to go to lessons anymore and she doesn't want to be friends with Elizabeth. And her mom is like, well, you still have to go to lessons, but I think you should try and reconcile with Elizabeth. She's not as brave as you. She wasn't about to stand up to her sister, but I think she still likes you and supports you and wants to be friends. And Felicity is now conflicted. She's like, should I take tea at lessons? It would be impolite to refuse the tea, but also my family is no longer drinking tea. And her mom's like, that's something you're going to have to decide for yourself. So the next day, Felicity goes to lessons, and Annabelle calls Elizabeth Bitsy, and Elizabeth stands up to Annabelle. She's like, don't call me that. If you call me Bitsy, I'm going to call you Banana Belle. And then when it's time for tea, Felicity turns her cup upside down, puts the spoon on top of it, and says, I will take no more tea. And you're like, it's the polite way to do it. The end. So this book had a tie-in collection, the school collection. We get Felicity's school outfit, a short gown, which is the laced jacket upper part, which is white with a floral pattern, and a red skirt. There's the reading and writing lesson, which comes with a horn book, a copybook, a quill, and ink. There's also the tea lesson, which comes with a tea caddy and a teacup. Apparently, in colonial Williamsburg for a period of time, they sold a human-sized Felicity branded tea set from like 1991 to 1998. I think that's very cute. And there was also a Windsor writing chair. Early American Girl was really working off of a formula. So like everybody's second book is about school and education, and they all get some sort of desk and writing utensils and a school outfit. The idea was trying to teach aspects of everyday life that would have been relevant to children. So the modern little girls reading this would be like, oh, I guess that's what school was like in 1974 or 1944. And so book 3 would always be the Christmas book, which this one is called Felicity's Surprise. The royal governor's wife, Lady Dunmore, has invited Felicity to a dancing lesson, which is going to take place at the governor's palace. This is very exciting, because it's like going to a fancy ball. And Felicity talks about it with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth explains that Miss Manderley arranged for the girls to go. The ball is going to be on January 7th. Felicity then goes to her father's shop to tell him about it, and Ben is there and he's upset. He's like, how could you? The governor represents the king. You shouldn't go. But Felicity's father's like, I think it's okay for you to go. And he says something about Christmas being a time for hopes to come true and happiness and peace or whatever. He means like peace between the patriots and the loyalists and everyone getting along because it's Christmas time, I guess. I don't think it super matters. Like if this ball was taking place in August, I think Felicity would still go, probably. But this is the Christmas book, and we always have to talk about how fantastic Christmas is. I'm not like anti-Christmas. I'm just like Christmas in fiction is sometimes portrayed in a way that I find a little bit goofy. At Felicity's lessons, they're practicing dancing. Felicity is not very good at it, and she's afraid that she's going to embarrass herself. And Felicity tells Elizabeth that Ben is upset about her going. And Elizabeth is a little bit awkward because her family are loyalists, but she does say that she really wants Felicity to come. Annabelle says something about like, I'm sure the Dunmores will be happy to see loyalists there. And Miss Manderley is like, they'll be happy to see everyone there, Annabelle. Like, we never explicitly say what Miss Manderley's political opinion is. She's pleased in Felicity Learns a Lesson when Felicity finds a polite way to refuse the tea, but I don't think that's meant to be a reflection on the fact that she thinks that the tea tax is unfair, because obviously she's still doing the tea service. I think she just likes the girls and wants them to be happy, and also finds Annabelle to be a bit much. Then Felicity and Elizabeth have a conversation where Elizabeth is like, what are you gonna wear? And Felicity's like, oh, my brown silk gown. The one you wear to church every Sunday? Elizabeth asked. Yes, said Felicity, it's my best. Oh, yes, of course, said Elizabeth quickly. That gown always looks fine. You'll be comfortable, too, because it's not so awfully fancy. And you are used to wearing it, because it is not new. Elizabeth. And so now Felicity wants a new gown, and she thinks that will help her feel more confident, but she knows that her mother is too busy with Christmas preparations, so she doesn't want to bother her. And Elizabeth's like, well, there's no harm in asking. And Felicity's like, no, I'm not going to ask. I'm just going to silently hope for it. Later, Felicity goes with her mother to run some errands. They go to the apothecary because her mother has a bit of a cough, and the apothecary's worried about it. He's like, it's not getting better. You need to rest and take it easy. And Felicity's mom is like, oh, but there's just so much to do at Christmas time. Like, I'll rest when it's all over. Then they go to the milliner, who sells fabric. The plan is to buy some lace trim to sort of spruce up Felicity's brown silk gown. And Felicity gets distracted by this doll wearing a blue silk gown. And the milliner is like, oh, that's based on a real gown. I have the pattern and the silk for it right here. And her mom can tell that Felicity wants it. And she's like, I've never known you to care about gowns and such. And Felicity's like, well, I've never been invited to the palace and needed one. So her mom buys the silk and the pattern for the dress. She starts working on the gown for Felicity, like hand sewing it, but she is still very busy, and her sickness keeps getting worse. And Felicity is concerned that the gown won't be ready in time. She occasionally goes to look at the unfinished gown. And one day she has a confrontation with Ben, where he's like, you've become a selfish, foolish girl. All you care about is this gown and this ball. I bet if Penny showed back up, you wouldn't even care. Which I appreciate Ben's strong political ideals. This is a 10-year-old girl. I think she's 9 at this point. She hasn't turned 10 yet. It's a 9-year-old girl. We maybe need to give her a little bit of grace. Then it's Christmas. They have a nice time. But after Christmas, Felicity's mother has gotten much worse. She has a very bad fever. And so they take turns watching over her and feeding her broth and whatnot. However you take care of a sick person, back when medicine wasn't very good. Felicity's father is very proud of her for helping out, And so he buys her that doll from the shop as a present. But Felicity's too sad to really care about it. I mean, she pretends that she cares about it, but she's not really in a doll mood, which, not like super relatable. Then Elizabeth visits, and Felicity gives her custody of the doll and says that she doesn't want to go to the ball anymore. And Elizabeth is like, try and keep hope. Like, I understand that you're very not happy right now, but, and then I think she says also, like, Christmas is the time for hope. Later, Felicity and her siblings are playing with a Noah's Ark toy. These books were more religious than I thought they were going to be. Just in comparison to Samantha's, which have, like, no religion in them. I just wasn't expecting it based on the Samantha books. So they're playing with the Noah's Ark toy, and Felicity's siblings are like, what happened to the animals who didn't get on the ark? And Felicity's like, well, I guess they drowned. What's drowned? Asked William. It's when you're all covered with water and you can't breathe and so you die. And when you die, that means you go away to heaven forever and never come back. Isn't that right, Lissy? And then William is like, is Mother going to die? And Felicity's like, no, Mother's going to be fine. But she is in fact very stressed that Mother's going to die. And later we see her praying. But thankfully, on the day of the ball, Mother's fever has broken. So she's not 100% better, but she's through the thick of it. And the gown is finished. It's laying on Felicity's bed. And Felicity's like, Elizabeth must have somehow done this. But unfortunately, even though Mother is better and she has the gown, there's no one to escort Felicity to the ball. And it would be improper to not go with an escort. Father still has to stay with Mother because she's still kind of sick. And Ben is morally opposed to this whole thing. But in a shocking turn of events, Ben says he'll do it. So she gets all dolled up and she goes to the ball and she has a conversation with Elizabeth where she explains that she worked on the gown, but her mother did all the tricky parts and Annabelle even helped. So it was a group effort. And I had assumed that Elizabeth had gotten the gown when she visited, but apparently Ben snuck the gown out of the house and brought it to the Coles house. And she asks Ben about it later, and he's like, it's Christmas time, and I wanted to help your hopes come true. The end. The collection for this book is the Holiday Collection. We get Felicity's Christmas gown and stomacher, which is a blue satin gown, and a reversible stomacher, which is the middle part of the dress that goes over the chest. It's funny that we're calling this a Christmas dress because she doesn't wear it on Christmas. It's really the dancing lesson ball dress, but that doesn't really fit in with the theme. There's the invitation and fashion doll, so it's the doll that she gets as a gift and the invitation to the ball. There's a Noah's Ark wooden toy and a Shrewsbury cakes kit, which comes with a basket, cookie cutters, sugar loaf, and a recipe card. I didn't mention it, but I think one of the conversations Felicity's having with Elizabeth, they're making these cakes while they're talking, is why this is included. I feel like often in American Girl books, when they mention a specific item, that's because they are selling that item as an accessory. Sort of a chicken and egg situation. I'm sure some of the time they come up with the items beforehand, like try and include this item in the book. And maybe some of the time the writer came up with the item and someone picked it out of the book to be like, I guess I'll make an item out of this. It's interesting from a production standpoint how that would have worked. And then not book specific, but also in 1991 we get Felicity's bedtime collection. There is her night shift cap and mules, which is basically her nightgown, her bed and bedding. This is a wooden 4-poster bed with a gingham bed canopy and curtains, and a toile print bedspread. There's also a mattress and a pillow. There's a dressing table and nighttime accessories. There's a candle on a chamber stick, a bed warmer, a book, which is a little pretty pocket book. There's also a clothes press, which is an armoire dresser type thing. Something else that happened in 1991 was there was a release event for Felicity. I feel like I've fallen. What's happening? This was an event held in colonial Williamsburg, attended by little girls and their moms. This event was attended by nearly 6,000 girls and 5,800 parents. These guests attended over the course of 24 separate sittings for the Tea Party, and at least at the time, the event had drawn in more attendees than any other event in the history of Williamsburg. Admission was $50 per child and $30 per adult, and admission to Colonial Williamsburg was separate. And thankfully for us, they made a VHS tape of this event called Felicity's Elegant Tea Party. This VHS, for some reason, has a framing device. There's an adult woman narrating it, and she is reminiscing on when she was a child in 1991 attending this event. So she's narrating this VHS tape from the future when she is an adult.
25 years ago, in the summer of 1991, I spent some time in Williamsburg, Virginia with my mother. I was there to attend a most unusual and unforgettable event. Felicity's Elegant Tea Party.
There was no reason to do it like that. And in fact, it was confusing to me. I was like, who's this lady talking? What's happening? But this video shows the event. The little girls got party favors, which included these caps. The author of the books, Valerie Tripp, gave a talk and did like a Q&A session. Then all the girls got all dressed up to have some tea. There's some really fantastic outfits. It's 1991, so a lot of it still looks very 80s. Girls are matching with their dolls, they're matching with their moms. Some of them have little colonial outfits, very cute. Pleasant Rowland gave a little speech. And then they did a play showing the events of Felicity Learns a Lesson. So Felicity meeting Elizabeth and Annabelle being annoying and the tea tax. And that's like most of the runtime of this video is this play. And then the end of the video is the narrator woman being like, and now I'm taking my daughter to Colonial Williamsburg after my fond memories of going as a child back in 1991, even though this tape.
Today, as I look back on the summer of 1991, I realize that the lessons I learned in Williamsburg stayed with me for a long time. And the memories are still with me. In fact, when I think of all the experiences I shared with my mom as I was growing up, this is one of my favorites.
Is from 1991. It's very weird. If you went to this event, you have to tell us about it. I think it's very cute that they did that. Now, let's go to 1992, when we get the final 3 books and their associated collections. The 4th book is Happy Birthday, Felicity. Felicity's grandfather, so her mother's father, is going to be visiting this spring, and he is a loyalist. And they're kind of concerned about that because he's not going to like Ben, and he's not going to like that they drink hot chocolate instead of tea. It's also Felicity's birthday coming up because all American Girl dolls have a birthday in the spring. At Felicity's lessons, they're practicing embroidery, and Annabelle is now old enough to start doing music lessons. And she plays guitar and sings badly. But Felicity is jealous because she wants to start learning music too. Later, Felicity is gardening, which is something she enjoys doing. And Ben is outside with her. I forget why. And then we meet Isaac. He's a free black teenage boy, and he is a drummer with the militia. And he's walking past Felicity's house, and Felicity asks him to teach them a few drum beats. Ben then tells Isaac that he heard a rumor that the governor's men are planning to take all the gunpowder from the magazine. And Felicity's like, why would he steal our gunpowder? And the boys explain that the governor is afraid that the militia might start fighting for independence. Grandfather arrives the next day, and he brings the kids a little lamb that they call Posy. Then Elizabeth visits, and Felicity, grandfather, and Elizabeth all garden together. And Elizabeth and grandfather bond over being loyalists and missing England. Then, grandfather gives Felicity a guitar that used to be her grandmother's. And she's told that she has to be very careful with it. She's basically supposed to just leave it up on the bookcase. But Felicity wants Annabelle to be jealous, so she takes it with her to her lessons. And Annabelle is jealous, so mission accomplished. After lessons, Felicity goes with Elizabeth back to her house, but there are some British military men visiting. And so Felicity and Elizabeth are sent outside, sort of get out of the way. While they're outside, they can hear the militia having a muster, like practicing. And Felicity wants to go watch, so they go into town, and Felicity leaves the guitar behind in the Cole family garden. When they get to town, Ben is of course there watching the militia. He thinks it's exciting, but Elizabeth is freaked out, so she runs away. And Felicity realizes the reason that Elizabeth is freaked out is because the militia isn't practicing for fun. There might actually be a war. That's why the militia is practicing. Ben tells Felicity that he wants to join the militia, but unfortunately he can't because he's an apprentice and he's contracted to stay with Felicity's father. And it wouldn't be honorable to break that contract. And Felicity's like, you're not going to do that, right? And Ben is like, well, I definitely won't do anything while your grandfather's here, because he would be very upset. And we're like, Ben is planning on leaving at some point. What I'm learning about holding an American Girl doll is that it's a little bit challenging because she's a little bit floppy. Like, I'm kind of trying to hold her legs, but the legs are kind of moving around. I guess I'm just supposed to hold her midsection, but I feel like I'm doing a bad job of keeping her upright. Like, she keeps like, I look at the viewfinder, I'm like, oh, whoops, sorry, girl. So then Felicity realizes that she left her guitar in the Cole family garden, and she runs to go get it and asks Ben to cover for her. While she's in the garden, she sees Mr. Cole talking to a British military officer, and so she hides. And the military officer tells Mr. Cole that the governor's Marines are going to take the gunpowder tonight. And the governor is going to lie and say that he heard rumors of a slave uprising, and that's why he stole the gunpowder, so that they wouldn't be able to get it for the uprising. And Mr. Cole is like, people are going to know that's a lie. Like, I'm loyal to the king, but I am not happy about this. This is going to be very bad for trust and relations with the colonists. But he doesn't really have any control over the situation. So he's like, okay, message received, I guess. And so the British military officer leaves. So then Felicity takes her guitar and runs back home. The guitar is wet and the ribbon is torn, and everyone's upset with her. They're like, did you take the guitar out after we specifically told you not to? And grandfather's like, clearly you can't be trusted with this, so I'm gonna take it back with me. Felicity then tries to tell them about the plot that she overheard, but they don't believe her. They're like, why would we trust you after you didn't listen to us about the guitar? Then Felicity waits until everybody is asleep and sneaks out. She's like, if they're not gonna do anything about it, I am. So she wakes up Ben and tells him about the plot, and then she goes to get Isaac. Because he's the drummer for the militia, they need him to drum and alert everybody what's happening. And he tells her, he's like, it's dangerous for a black person like me to be out at night. And she's like, I know, but you have to trust me. And he's like, okay, small child, I guess. So the three of them go to the magazine, and they're waiting for kind of a long time, but then the Marines show up, and Felicity has Isaac sound the alarm on his drum. A bunch of people in the town wake up and are very angry when they find out what's going on. In the commotion, Isaac slips away, and then Felicity's father shows up. And Ben explains that they sounded the alarm and that the gunpowder has been stolen. The next morning, Felicity's dad is like, no one will ever trust the governor again. And Felicity is like, will you trust me again? And he's like, yeah. Then she goes out to the parlor, and it's all decorated because it's her birthday today. And they have a birthday celebration, and her grandfather forgives her and gives her back the guitar. The end. The collection for this book is the birthday collection. There's the spring gown with pinner apron. This is a pink gown and a floral apron that is attached with pins. And in her hair, she wears a ribbon with a little pom-pom on it. There's Posy the lamb, who is wearing a flower wreath, a tilt-top table and chairs, a hot chocolate serving set, Felicity's party treats, which include treats on a stand, flowers in a vase, and a little figurine, Felicity's guitar, and a needlework kit and frame. Which this is a functional needlework set. You could actually do embroidery with this if you wanted to. And it says, faithful friends forever be. The next book is Felicity Saves the Day. Felicity's family is spending the summer at her grandfather's plantation. More thoughts on that later. The kids give their grandfather a bird bottle. This is a little clay bottle for a bird to build a nest in. And Felicity's like, it's kind of silly because birds don't build their nests in summer, so nothing's going to happen with it right now. But her brother William is too young to understand that, so he's very excited about this bird bottle, and he wants to check it all the time. Felicity and grandfather ride horses every morning. They both really love horses, so they bond over that. And then one day they have a guest for dinner named Mrs. Wentworth. She loves to gossip, and she tells them that Governor Dunmore has been driven out of Williamsburg. He's returning to England, because everyone hates him. And Mrs. Wentworth is a loyalist, so she's not very pleased about this. Then Felicity and grandfather go out with Mr. Wentworth, because Mr. Wentworth has brought some horses that grandfather might possibly buy, so he's going to show them to him. And we go and look at these horses, and one of them is Penny! And so grandfather buys Penny from Mr. Wentworth. Felicity sends a very excited letter to Elizabeth telling her that she has Penny back. And then grandfather teaches her how to take care of Penny. So Penny has a scrape on her leg, and he teaches her how to use witch hazel. And then one day, Felicity sees something in the bird bottle. Not a bird, of course, but a message. It is Ben's signal whistle wrapped up in a cloth, and the cloth has a message asking for help with a little map drawn on it. And so Felicity follows the map and finds Ben in the woods. He ran away to join George Washington's army, and he fell crossing the creek. And so he lost all of his supplies and got a cut on his leg. I'm going to be honest, he's not really proving that he would be useful in George Washington's army. This is a little bit pathetic. At first, Felicity wants to tell on him, but then she decides to keep his secret. Because when she was sneaking out to see Penny, he kept her secret. So she helps him with his leg, similar to the horse, and brings him food and stuff. Which we learn that Ben never even asked Mr. Merriman what he thought about Ben joining the army. He just left without saying anything. At dinner, Felicity finds out that her dad is coming to visit the plantation. I feel like I didn't make it clear that father stayed home because he still has to run the shop. But now he is coming to visit, and we learn that Ben ran away, and Felicity pretends to be surprised. And Felicity's father put a notice in the paper that Ben ran away because Ben has broken his contract, so I guess like broken the law basically. And Felicity is like, uh-oh, this is not good. So then she goes to Ben and she's like, do you want to confront my father and apologize? And Ben is like, no. And she's like, okay, then you have to run away like now. So she gives him some supplies, and she also makes a map for him so that he can get to the ferry that will take him to wherever George Washington's army is. And he sets out on his way. Then when she gets back to the house, there are some bounty hunters there. And they're like, we're gonna look for that runaway. We bet he's going to the ferry. So we're gonna go there. And we might have to be rough with him. And Felicity's like, oh my god. So then she takes Penny and rides to try and find Ben to warn him. And it's very dramatic. It's like in the middle of a rainstorm. And she does eventually find Ben and convinces him to come back with her. They get back to the house. Felicity and Ben both apologize. Ben for running away, Felicity for harboring him. And then father arrives. And he's like, Ben, you can be a soldier when you turn 18. On the condition that once you're done being a soldier, you return to me and finish out your apprenticeship. And Ben is like, great, that's better than I hoped for. And we also find out that Jiggy Nye is in jail, so they can bring Penny home and Jiggy Nye won't be there to cause a fuss about it. And so grandfather says that they can take Penny with them. The end. The collection associated with this book is the summer collection. We have Felicity's summer outfit, which originally parts of these were sold separately as an outfit and accessories. It was a white dress with a blue sash and a straw hat and a white cap. Then there is the plantation play accessories. This includes a bird bottle and bird, a whistle and a cloth with Ben's message on it, a racket and a shuttlecock, and a shell, reed, and bubble instructions. So in the book, they blow bubbles by putting soap in a shell and blowing the bubbles with a reed. And so this instructs you how to make the bubble solution, so you can do that also. And finally, there is the rescue kit. This is a basket with witch hazel and lavender, a mortar and pestle, a pocketbook for holding papers, a letter from Elizabeth, a newspaper ad about Ben, and a map. The final book is Changes for Felicity. Felicity had a new baby sister named Polly, born in between books. It was mentioned in the last book that her mother was pregnant, and Penny is pregnant with a foal. Felicity and Elizabeth go and make a delivery to Mr. Pelham, who is the town jailer. And we learn that Jiggy Nye is still in jail, and he has a fever and no money and is maybe gonna die? I don't know. The jailer tells them that Jiggy Nye knew a lot about animals, but he turned to drinking when his wife died. And that's why he's the person that he is today. Elizabeth starts talking to Felicity about the power of kindness and forgiveness, and maybe if they help out Jiggy Nye, he'll become a nicer person. And Felicity's really not into this idea at first, but she finally agrees, and they plan to take him a blanket and some medicine the next day. But then the next day, Elizabeth doesn't show up. Felicity checks at her house, and the servant says that they aren't receiving any callers. So Felicity goes to the jail by herself, and the jailer is too busy to talk to her, because Mr. Cole, Elizabeth's father, has been put in jail for being a loyalist. And Felicity's like, oh no. And she's worried that Elizabeth might be mad at her because her family are patriots. But her mother encourages her, like, you and Elizabeth are still friends. This is just a hard time for her family. And so the next time Felicity sees Elizabeth, when she's at church, she slips Elizabeth her embroidery sampler, which says, faithful friends forever be. Later, Felicity sees that Elizabeth has this sampler propped up in her window, meaning they are still friends. The next day, grandfather, who is here visiting, goes out into the rain and goes to the jail. He talks to Mr. Cole, and then he goes to talk to the authorities about having Mr. Cole released. But after this excursion, grandfather is now very ill. Felicity goes in to sit with him and read to him from the Bible. "The Lord is my shepherd," she read. "Therefore I lack nothing. He shall feed me in a green pasture and lead me forth beside the waters of comfort." And she compares this green pasture to the plantation. She's like, I always thought the plantation was like that. Again, more thoughts on that later. And then, unfortunately, grandfather dies, and they have a burial at his plantation, and while they're at the plantation, they find a trunk that contains what would have been Felicity's birthday present, which is a green riding habit. And Felicity's very sad that he's dead, and her mom have a conversation about grief. Father and Marcus stay at the plantation to settle grandfather's business affairs, and everyone else goes back home. When Felicity gets home, she sees Elizabeth again. She's also sad that grandfather has passed away, and she says that her father is moving to New York, where it is safer for loyalists. But her mother and her sister are staying at the house. Then we check on the jail again for Jiggy Nye, and we find out that Jiggy Nye has been released. The jailer explains that an old gentleman visited Mr. Cole and then talked to Jiggy Nye. He gave Jiggy Nye money and said something about a penny, but he gave him a lot more money than that. Ha ha ha. So Felicity's grandfather gave Jiggy Nye payment for Penny, really just giving him money to help him out. And now Jiggy Nye has paid off most of his debt, and he is working at the jailer's house caring for his horses to pay off the rest of the debt. Later, Penny is having her foal, but Marcus and Father are still not home, and they are the ones who know about horses. And Penny starts having trouble during the birth, and so Felicity runs to get Jiggy Nye. Because remember how back in the day, he apparently knew a lot about horses? And so Felicity, in desperation, runs to go get Jiggy Nye, and she asks him for help, and he's like, "It was you and your family who helped me out. I will help you with this horse." And so he helps out Penny, real full circle moment. Penny successfully has her colt, and we name the colt Patriot. Finally, Father and Marcus come home, and we find out that grandfather has left the plantation to Mother and the children. We also learn that war is coming, and so Father is going to help out the cause by being a commissionary agent, collecting supplies for the army. And so he's going to be out a lot, and Felicity is going to have to help out in the store, which she's pretty excited about. And Felicity gives her father Penny to ride while he's helping the army, because she'll feel better if the two of them are together. The end. And then finally, the collection associated with this book is the winter collection. The cardinal cloak, which is a red cloak, muff, mitts, and pattens, which are all old-timey things for being outside in the cold, a travel trunk, which is a dark green trunk, winter entertainments, which include a jumping jack paper doll, a spinning top, and a lantern, candle, and fire screen. And finally, colonial undergarments, hoops, stays, and pockets. The pockets are worn under the dress and accessed through a slit. And you can see it on my Felicity. She has the little slit in her meat outfit. And apparently almost all of her outfits have that slit, so you could put the pockets under the dress. Now, I explained in my American Girl history video, which is the 4th video I ever made, which is crazy, that I bought this Felicity doll without knowing anything about her. I liked that she was an old Pleasant Company doll and that she was cheap on eBay. And then I learned, while researching for that video, that Felicity's family are slave owners. And I make a little joke in that video that I now have a slave-owning child on my bookshelf. Which I think a similar toy purchase story. Jenny Nicholson tells a story in one of her Patreon videos, I believe the one about strange objects that she owns. By the way, if you aren't supporting Jenny Nicholson on Patreon, you totally should be. I've been supporting her on there since 2018. But she tells this story about how she got a Furby, specifically a Millennium Furby, and then later found out that that Furby was being sold in the World Trade Center during the September 11th attacks. And she was like, now I just have this Furby that's a grim reminder of the September 11th attacks, which is kind of how I feel about this Felicity. But in the comments of my American Girl video, I get not an insignificant amount of discourse about Felicity. And so, sort of inspired by all of the comments I got, I made a TikTok or I guess a short form video, because I think I've uploaded it here too, about how I don't think American Girl handled the issue of slavery well in Felicity's stories. Which, of course, that led to way more people arguing with me about it. I kind of brought that on myself. But I stand by that opinion. And I guess that's the hill I'm going to die on. That I don't think Felicity's stories do a good job handling the topic of slavery as educational books for children. I'd ask you to please hear me out before you leave an angry comment, but I know people are going to leave comments anyway, so whatever. So, as I've said, these are educational books for children. They teach about what is normal in daily life for whatever setting and time period they're talking about. And slavery was a very big part of colonial Virginia. People like to say it's historically accurate for there to be slavery in Felicity's stories. And I agree, it is historically accurate. My problem is American Girl almost always approaches these books with a modern sensibility, whether or not that is necessarily a common opinion at the time. They portray social issues that not everyone agreed with at the time, and our protagonist shares our modern opinion about this issue. So in Felicity's story, the Patriots versus the Loyalists, Felicity and her family are patriots and think that taxation without representation is wrong. Some other examples: Julie should be allowed to play basketball even though she's a girl. Samantha thinks child labor is wrong. And Courtney, the 1980s girl, thinks that you shouldn't discriminate against people with HIV. Apparently that's what her second book is about. I didn't know. I only just read that book recently. So these books have never portrayed history in a way that is politically or morally neutral. It is always through a socially progressive lens. And so I think it's weird to have slavery as just a part of the setting of these books that goes unremarked upon. Felicity's family own Rose and Marcus. They are referred to as servants within the text of the story, but it is clarified in the historical context section that they are enslaved. We meet a free black teenager named Isaac, and we hear that it would be dangerous for him to be out at night. And Felicity's grandfather owns a plantation. Felicity loves it there. It's her favorite place in the world, which I don't think the enslaved people working there love it. And at the end of the series, grandfather leaves the plantation to Felicity's mother, Felicity, and her siblings. So now she partially owns a plantation. I don't know how colonial property law works. I don't know if her brother William would inherit it, or if Felicity would inherit it and share it with her future husband, but it is in part hers at the end of the story. In Felicity Saves the Day, we get some historical context in the looking back section about slavery. I think it's fine. It's very factual. Plantations depended on slaves. Planters provided slave families with small one-room cabins, simple clothing, and corn to fix in many ways for food. Most slaves worked in the fields from sunup to sundown. Some slaves learned skills like shoemaking, carpentry, or weaving. That way, the plantation could provide many things it needed from the work of its slaves. A few slaves worked in the main house and did the cooking, cleaning, and childcare for the planter's family. Slaves had little time to themselves. On Sundays and holidays, slaves tended to small gardens of their own and spent time with their families. Telling stories, singing, and dancing helped them enjoy at least part of their lives, which were directed by the slave owner in every other way. Some owners treated their slaves very harshly, and any planter could separate slave families by selling off husbands, wives, or children. Many slaves tried to escape, and some succeeded. A few slaves saved enough money over time to buy their freedom. Others fought in the Revolutionary War and were given their freedom afterward. I think that's basically fine. My concern is that I don't know how many of the kids reading these books were reading the historical context section. What impression do these books give you on slavery if you're not reading that context, which is only for one of the books? Even if you did read that context, the story itself might give you the impression that it's not all that bad. Like, Felicity and her family are nice. Rose and Marcus seem to like them. The stories themselves are divorced from anything negative having to do with slavery. Like, woo, plantations, aren't they so great? This cognitive disconnect is how you get people who think it's cool to get married on a plantation. I feel like they didn't want to implicate Felicity and her family. If you're telling kids slavery is a very bad thing, even if you're nice, owning people is still very wrong, then you're saying that Felicity and her family are taking part in something that's very wrong. And these books usually stay away from their protagonists being morally complicated. The American Girl protagonists do the right thing, or at least learn the right thing. right? Which, let's also acknowledge the hypocrisy of these stories being about freedom, the freedom of the colonies, and that goddamn horse. It's the main theme of the books. And then stage right during these conversations is Rose, a woman who they own. So how could they have portrayed slavery differently in Felicity's stories? I don't think it necessarily had to be a big change. My understanding is that abolitionism wasn't a super common perspective pre-Revolutionary War, though you do have communities like the Quakers and other religious communities who have a long history of abolitionism. I believe I have suggested in the past that, similar to how we use Felicity and Elizabeth to contrast patriots versus loyalists, we could have maybe had Elizabeth's family own a plantation and Felicity be like, I don't know about that. To be fair, I did suggest that before I had read Felicity's books, and I did not realize how interwoven slavery is in these books. The plantation is a really big part of it. Marcus and Rose are in every book. So changing that would have been kind of a big change. I feel like they maybe could have added in a conversation, either with Marcus or Rose, tying into the freedom theme. Like maybe Marcus wants to leave to join the Patriot Army too. And Felicity is like, you want to leave? And Marcus is like, you know I care for your family very much, but I want to fight for my freedom too. The colonies being free from Britain doesn't change the fact that slaves aren't free. And Felicity's like, oh. I'm kind of thinking of, there's a scene in Samantha's stories that I like, where Samantha and her friend Nellie are going to check on Samantha's maid, Jessie, who is a black woman. And Jessie lives in the bad part of town, because the town is segregated, which Samantha is pretty sheltered, so she didn't know about this beforehand. And her friend Nellie, who's a little bit more world-wise, is like, yeah, that's just the way things are. And Samantha's kind of upset about it, and then we move on. Samantha's stories aren't about segregation. It's not even a subplot, it's just a moment. An acknowledgement in the story that this thing is bad, and the protagonist reacting to it and having an opinion about it. And I would even argue, because the theme of Felicity's books is freedom, slavery actually ties in quite well to her books. People have said that the reason that these books don't talk about slavery and don't talk about slavery being bad is because they're from Felicity's perspective, and that that's not what her stories are about, and also it would be historically inaccurate for her to have that opinion, which is kind of silly to me, because the whole point of American Girl is historical characters with modern morality. This is not a biography of a real little girl named Felicity. This is a fictional story meant to educate children. She can think whatever we want her to think. She's not real. I always find it funny when people act as though I'm trying to cancel Felicity. You know, a fictional child. They get very defensive about it. I think they think that I think that you aren't allowed to like her, that she's like wrong, when really my opinion, which has never been how I feel like the company did an underwhelming job with this element of her story. But that's not Felicity's fault. She's not real. And I recognize that portraying this era of history, the colonial era, the Revolutionary War, is always going to run up against the problem of portraying slavery, right? How do you do that thoughtfully? They did very purposefully course correct by releasing their next doll, Addie. Her stories take place during the era of the Civil War, and they had an advisory board to make the portrayal sensitive and educational for kids. Felicity is just our awkward attempt number one at portraying slavery during American history. Hopefully I've articulated myself well during this segment. I think there's a lot of nuance here that hopefully I'm getting across. But I do think it's really important. It's important to teach kids carefully and sensitively. Now, if we could completely pivot, let's talk about Felicity's short stories. These came out in the American Girl magazine and were also published independently and in a short story collection. First one is Felicity Takes a Dare from the 1993 magazine. Felicity is walking on a fence. She jumps down and her siblings get splattered with mud, and her mom says she needs to know the difference between being brave and being foolhardy. Later, the family goes to the fair, and some boys dare Felicity to feed some wild horses. It's going well, but then one of the horses gets spooked and kicks Felicity in the arm, and she breaks her arm, and she says that her mom was right. Felicity's dancing shoes. In 1994, Miss Manderly is teaching the girls dance lessons, and Annabelle makes fun of Felicity's shoes, because Felicity is wearing just her everyday shoes, because she ruined her nice shoes. So her shoes are very clunky, and she's also very bad at dancing. So she steps on Annabelle's foot in the clunky shoes. Felicity's sister Nan always wants Felicity to show her the dances, because Nan is very excited about dancing and etiquette lessons. So Felicity borrows Nan's nice shoes in exchange for teaching her the dances. These shoes are unfortunately too small, so they hurt her, and she has to move slower and be more careful. But she does do better at dancing, perhaps because she's moving slower. Felicity always hides the shoes in a bag that she then puts in the gardener's basket in Miss Manderly's garden. But then one day, the basket is missing, so she has to run after the gardener, and she's wearing Nan's shoes, so she can't run in them, so she has to take them off and run in her stockings. And then she gets her shoes back, but now her stockings are ruined, so she has to go to her mom and admit everything. And she's no longer able to borrow Nan's shoes, and she starts wearing her old shoes again, but she's still better at dancing because of all the practice she was doing teaching Nan. Felicity's new sister from 1994. Mother is pregnant. This is between books 5 and 6. And Felicity has to be at home more, helping to entertain guests. And she finds this very boring. Mrs. Wentworth, the gossipy lady, shows up one day, and she says that they should visit grandfather's plantation. Rose thinks that the baby is coming soon, and Miss Merriman shouldn't travel, but Felicity is very bored, so she convinces her mother to let them go. They're all taking a carriage to the plantation during a rainstorm, and then they end up crashing into the riverbank. They go to wait out the storm in a deserted house, and then, of course, Mom starts having the baby. Felicity helps with her siblings while this is happening, and at one point, Rose asks her to go fetch the bag from the carriage. Presumably, Rose has some stuff in it that will help with the birth. The baby is born, and they name the baby Polly, short for pollywog, which is a tadpole, because of the riverbank situation. I don't think it's actually short for that, but they're joking, like, inspired by the events of the day. Felicity discovers a secret from 1996. Felicity is playing with her hoop and stick, and she accidentally splashes mud on Mrs. Burney's linens. Mrs. Burney works doing laundry and embroidery, and she is grumpy and kind of odd. In apology, Felicity offers to help her, and while she's helping her, she realizes some of the odd things Miss Burney does is because she can't see very well, and she's keeping it a secret because she wants to still have people pay her to do work, and she's afraid if people know that she can't see very well, they won't pay her to do embroidery. So Felicity gets her some glasses. Finally, Felicity's Valentine from 2006. This was only published in the short story collection. It was never separately available, and I couldn't find it. There are also some additional items in Felicity's collection. There's the town fair outfit, which was limited edition, a dress with an apron, and a windmill toy. The traveling gown, which is a tie-in to the short story Felicity's New Sister. This is a purple dress that will come up again later. The work gown, which is a stripy dress. The riding habit and hat. A deep green jacket, skirt, and tricorn. This is mentioned in the book Changes for Felicity as a gift from her grandfather. The riding breeches and hat. This is a pair of black breeches and a hat which she would have worn with her shift. This is advertised as being Ben's breeches from Meet Felicity, but I don't think they would have fit that well. And Penny the horse. Yes, you could get a doll-sized horse, which these dolls are 18 inches tall, so that is one big toy horse. This was originally marketed as a generic horse, but then it was marketed as part of Felicity's collection. Then, in 1996, American Girl did a tie-in vacation package with Colonial Williamsburg, the Felicity in Williamsburg Family Vacation Package. This included a day tour with a guide showing kids around the town, with locations in the town that are similar to locations in the book. So, like, here's a general store. Kind of like the one that Felicity's dad ran. This really reminds me of the Twilight Festival in Forks, Washington, where they're like, this isn't the Cullens house, but it could be. Kids would also do a tea lesson with Miss Manderly. The package was designed for 2 adults and 2 children ages 6 to 12, but could be customized. Rates for a family of 4 start at $522 plus taxes, depending on the season and type of accommodations. How much is that In today's money, $522 in 1996 is $1,071 in 2025. So it more than doubled. That's cool. Love that for us. This vacation package included accommodations at an official Colonial Williamsburg hotel, 2 breakfasts and a tavern dinner, a Patriots Pass, good for 1 year of admission to Colonial Williamsburg attractions, and tickets for the walking tour and lessons for Miss Manderley. You could also go just as a day trip. The Felicity tour was $55 for adults and $41 for children 12 and under. This article explains that Stevie Kaufman and Marilyn Jennings helped to start the Felicity in Williamsburg program as part of Colonial Williamsburg school and group services. They said that the Felicity Tour has brought hundreds of new visitors to Colonial Williamsburg, including many who would not have come otherwise. This tour won an award in 1999 and then ended sometime after that. Then, in 2002, Felicity is removed from catalogs and is retired, which meant she was no longer sold. She was then re-released in 2005, and she has a new meet outfit, which is the purple traveling gown from before, and so some book art is redone to put her in this new outfit. Also in 2005, Felicity gets a movie. Felicity, an American Girl adventure movie. This aired on the WB and got a DVD release, and it stars Shailene Woodley as Felicity. This movie is very similar to the books, but things have just been rearranged. So I found the most interesting thing about the movie, how they arranged the books into this plot. We open with Felicity riding a horse, of course. She goes to her father's store and learns that Jiggy Nye has gotten a new horse. She meets Elizabeth and Annabelle. We learn that Ben wants to join the militia, and then she goes home and her grandfather visits. She starts having lessons and learns about the tax on tea. The Jiggy Nye horse plot from the first book is kind of woven through. So like, she'll go to lessons, she'll go to see the horse. But she lets Penny free by about the halfway point of the movie. She refuses tea at lessons, and then Ben runs away. Felicity's family visits the plantation. Her grandfather has found Penny, so they are now reunited. Felicity finds Ben's note, so she rescues him and brings him inside of the barn, and then he comes in and apologizes. Felicity is talking to grandfather about how she convinced Ben to come back and apologize, and then mid-conversation, grandfather doubles over coughing, and he is now dead. Family returns to town and find that Elizabeth's father is in jail. So Felicity and her dad visit him in jail. They promise to get him out, and they also see that Jiggy Nye is in jail. We do get Mr. Cole out of jail, and then we find out that Penny is going to have a foal. Felicity brings Jiggy Nye a blanket and food, and then receives an invitation to the dance lesson ball. Felicity wants a new gown, and even though her mom is due to have a baby, her mom offers to make it for her anyway. Her mother has the baby, but she's doing very poorly afterward, and Felicity has to help out and prays that her mother doesn't die. But her mother doesn't die, and she gets better in time for the ball. The gown is ready because Elizabeth and her mom finished it, and Ben escorts Felicity to the ball. There's a funny moment where Elizabeth tells Annabelle that Ben is the son of a wealthy loyalist, so she initially tries to flirt with him and then realizes that that was a lie and leaves him. Then Penny is having her foal, so Felicity gets Jiggy Nye for help, and afterwards he is invited to their Christmas dinner. The end. If that retelling felt very disjointed, that's because that's how the movie is. This movie is combining, I was gonna say 6 books, but arguably it's 5 because we don't do most of the plot from the birthday book. But we're still jumping around a lot. The scenes often felt very short. I feel like I didn't get enough of any individual storyline for it to land emotionally, except for, I guess, the horse storyline. But I don't care about that, so... I don't remember the Samantha movie having quite this problem. This movie felt kind of chaotic. I definitely think the books are better. Then, coinciding with this 2005 re-release, Felicity gets some new items. The gala gown, which is a red and gold dress. The tea lesson gown, which is a yellow dress with roses and a straw hat. The rose garden gown, which is her original meet outfit. So this was sold for a brief period of time so that you could get the original one if you wanted it. Baby Polly in her cradle, which looks creepy. A colonial stable set, which is a fold-out backdrop with accessories. Patriot the foal. A colonial tea set, which is pink this time, and a new version of the tea treats. We also get Elizabeth as a doll. She is Felicity's best friend doll. Elizabeth has light skin, a Josefina face mold, blonde hair, and blue eyes. In the original book illustrations, she had brown hair. In the movie, she's portrayed as having blonde hair, so I think that's why they redesigned her. And they edited some of the illustrations in the books to reflect this. Elizabeth's meet outfit is a pink ball gown. This is unusual because usually a meet outfit is casual clothes, like everyday clothes, whereas this is like a special occasion dress. And her accessories include a pinned cap, a pretty fan, and jewelry. And she also comes with the book, Very Funny Elizabeth. Elizabeth likes to play pranks on Annabelle. Felicity is involved also, but this is Elizabeth's story. And Annabelle receives a proposal from a lord. His name is Harry, and his father died, and he inherited the title. And his sister Priscilla is sort of running the show. And so they send a proposal for Annabelle, and she immediately wants to accept. We get some conversations in this book about the importance of marriage for women during this time. Felicity and Elizabeth are kind of concerned about this marriage. They feel like Annabelle is not really thinking it through, especially because as part of this marriage, she would be moving to England forever. But Annabelle is not concerned about this. Then Priscilla and Harry come to visit. Harry is very quiet and deferential, and Priscilla is extremely condescending. Priscilla wants to teach Annabelle manners, and she offers to teach Elizabeth too, and Elizabeth says yes because she wants to annoy Annabelle. And then she regrets it because Priscilla is extremely annoying. She plays a few pranks on Annabelle to make her act improper, so like puts salt in her tea and puts a spider on her toast. And Elizabeth, in contrast, acts very proper. This backfires because now Priscilla wants to take both of them to England. Elizabeth protests. She's like, I played tricks on Annabelle, you don't want to take me. She's actually pretty proper. It's all my fault. But nobody believes her. So there's going to be an announcement at the engagement announcement that Elizabeth is also coming. So it's going to be a double announcement event. Felicity and Elizabeth hate this, so they scheme on how to get Elizabeth out of it, and they decide to put snow in Priscilla's wig. And so then at the party, Priscilla's wig begins to drip, and she's embarrassed and runs out. And Elizabeth can tell that even Annabelle is pretty amused by this. But Priscilla is very mad, and Elizabeth is no longer invited to England. And then Harry jumps in and says that he doesn't want to get married. He's been talking with Ben, and he wants to join the army on the loyalist side. And so Priscilla and Harry leave. Elizabeth then got her own collection of items. This included the holiday gown, which is light green with a floral pattern and dark green trim. It also has a gold panel. I've always thought this dress looked ugly and too busy. A quilted cloak in dark green, a tea lesson gown, which is light blue with a sheer cap and a ton of lace detailing. I think it looks kind of silly. Her riding outfit, which is light pink with a cream felt hat. I think she looks like a very fancy Southern lady in this. This is the only outfit of hers that I like. And the summer outfit, which is in light green satin with a hat, and I don't like this fabric. She also has a night shift with embroidery and bows, a fashion doll, bedding, which goes on Felicity's bed. It is light blue with a canopy. I think it looks very pretty. Dressing table accessories, which is a mirror, flowers, and a powder container. And then there are two items that are meant for two dolls, and so I'm mentioning them here because it's meant to be for Felicity and Elizabeth, and so it wouldn't make sense to talk about them without having talked about Elizabeth. But there is the 2-doll clothes press, which is just a bigger dresser, and a 2-doll colonial carriage. This is a horse-drawn carriage that is yellowish-brown with these little flower details. In the late 2000s, there were 3 mystery books: Peril at Kings Creek in 2006, Traitor in Williamsburg in 2008, and Lady Margaret's Ghost in 2009. And then, in 2011, Felicity's collection was retired a second time. And then, she was re-released in 2017. This was during the Historical Characters Beforever rebrand, which is known for being less historically accurate and also ugly. It's not historically inaccurate and cute, which would have been forgivable. It's ugly. So Felicity gets a new meet outfit. This is a teal and yellow gown meant to look like an overdress and an underskirt, kind of like a robe a la française. It's weirdly kind of short on her. I think it looks cheap and bad looking. Then we have Felicity's meet accessories. This includes a cap, a necklace, a straw hat, and a scarf. These accessories are mind-boggling to me. Are you meant to wear the straw hat with this meat dress? And the white shoulder scarf with it? What? It feels like they're trying to do the meat accessories for the old meat dresses, which were much more casual looking. So it seems really weird to have them with this new dress. The only other Beforever Felicity item is undergarments. There's a shift, stays, and bum roll. Like all of the other Beforever books, Felicity's 6 books have been combined into 2 books. There are also 2 other books, Gunpowder and Tea Cakes, My Journey with Felicity from 2017. This is part of American Girl's time travel series, where a modern-day protagonist goes back in time to meet a historical character. And then there's also Real Stories from My Time, The Boston Tea Party from 2018. This series portrays a new character each book, experiencing some big historical event, interwoven with an existing historical character, which is an interesting idea because the historical characters' main books are just about daily life. They're not actually experiencing big events. Like the Felicity books are just about the tensions before the Revolutionary War. She doesn't see the war, she doesn't see the end of the war, she doesn't see the Boston Tea Party, she's just experiencing 1774. And then, in 2019, she was retired a 3rd time. As for recently, in 2021, she had a 35th anniversary re-release. This was the doll in her original meat outfit in an old-style American Girl box. There was also a one-of-a-kind doll. This was part of a series of dolls that were auctioned off on eBay for charity that were designed by Carly Cushney of Harlem's Fashion Row. And they're all supposed to be modern takes on the historical girls. And I think this Felicity is hideous. She is by far the ugliest in the group. She's wearing this floral dress and her coral meat necklace and a flower crown and silver sandals that have pom-poms on them. Why? Why does she look like that? And then, coming in just under the wire as I was editing this video, American Girl has released modern era American Girls. These are 14-inch dolls of the original 6 historical characters, Molly, Samantha, Kirsten, Felicity, Addie, Josefina, and they are wearing modernized versions of their meat outfits. American Girl makes 14-inch dolls for a younger audience. Previously, this has been the Welly Wishers and the AG Sisters. But these dolls have new face sculpts trying to emulate the original dolls. And these also have a Playline price point, or at least Playline for American Girl, of $90. So these are aimed at kids, not collectors. And shockingly, at least to me, Felicity is included. Over the past 5 years, usually they have not included her whenever they do some sort of nostalgia with the older characters. They usually skip over her, so they do the original 3 plus Addie and Josefina. Probably because they want the lineup to look not quite so white. This reminds me of the early Disney Princess brand, trying to combine all of your iconic characters, but unfortunately, your iconic characters are not very diverse. And they also might be skipping over Felicity because they don't want to ignite discourse about her backstory. But she is included in this modern era collection. Her doll is wearing a blouse that is printed with her meat dress pattern. She's wearing the necklace from her meat accessories and jeans with a lace-up detail. I kind of like this outfit. It feels very shabby chic to me. Felicity is the only one of the girls who's wearing pants, and we know that canonically she would love to wear pants, so I think that's fun. I don't love that they added in this light pink detailing. I feel like maybe they could have chosen a color that felt more Felicity, and I feel like the color of the necklace clashes with everything else. I've seen a lot of negativity online towards this release, and I agree that I wish the dolls looked a little bit better, but I'm optimistic as to what it means for the brand. It's interesting to me that they are making dolls of these historical characters aimed at children. In recent years, when they've been making dolls of these characters, they have been limited time releases, mainly aimed at adult collectors. The only 2 characters of this group that you can buy all the time are Addie and Josefina. The rest of the characters are only occasionally available, and none of them have additional items or outfits outside of limited drops. In the case of Felicity and Kirsten, they don't even have books. So I am, perhaps naively, hoping that this modern line means that they're gonna release some more stuff for these characters. If a nostalgic parent buys their kid this Felicity doll. The only other stuff on the website that's Felicity is stickers and a drink tumbler. So I'm hoping that this is a sign that they'll add more stuff for all of the girls. And I'm intrigued that they're including Felicity after she's been left out for so many years. That's all I have for you today. I'd like to give a big thank you to my patrons, and a special shout out to Austin Poston, Checkered Omega, Court, Megan, and Melanie Mermaid. If you didn't know, I have a Patreon. I post monthly bonus content on there. It's just an extra way to support me, no pressure. I am Sarah Seraph on all social media. As always, the sources I used for this video will be linked in the description, and I don't know how to end a YouTube video. So, bye!